know it was going wrong? What do we do now that we think it's wrong? Can we right the ship, or do we give up? And so a lot of the work I do now is working with couples, negotiate that. By the time you come see me, so I work in conflict, so by the time you come see me, something's a little off, right? So you come see me and you say, you know, we're just having trouble with our communication. We just need some homework, some strategies, some techniques to get us back on track. Well, through that process, I'll give them some homework, I'll give them some techniques. But a lot of times, if we can't solve it after one session, you know, try this, did it work? Something fundamentally is broken. But we have a really hard time figuring out, what do we do if this doesn't work? Because I've put a lot of investment in that relationship. So what do we do? And we fight or we distance. Part of a relationship is attraction, but it's also sharing and connection. And then the third part is commitment. Most of our relationships are what we call non-love. These are relationships that we have that are just fleeting. So someone that we see in the grocery store, maybe a neighbor, we don't necessarily love them. So the majority of our relationships are non-love. So now we're really just looking at what would be a love relationship. The hallmark, a full supported triangle, having intimacy, passion, and commitment, we can call that consummate love. So this is the best love ever. This is the model relationship. We are attracted to each other. We try and keep up that attraction. We keep up the intimacy by continuing to communicate. And we are faithfully committed to this, holding on to this relationship. We know this is what makes a relationship, but all three parts have to be there to really make it stable. What do we call a relationship that only is based on passion? Lust. Excellent. We can call a lot of other things. We'll work with lust. Infatuation. It's the beginning part. But how many relationships do we know that's all that's there? It never builds. You don't have this part, intimacy, which is communication and connection. You don't have that part. You don't want that part. Or you want it, but your partner doesn't, and relationships are a two-way game. All right, so we'll call those ones infatuation, lust, whatever else you want to call them. You know what I'm talking about. Okay, so that's that one. Okay, what do we call a relationship that's missing sort of the sexual part of it, the attraction, the love? That's friendship. That's what friendship is. It's based on a lot of communication and sharing. That's a beautiful relationship, but we're talking about romantic relationships, so it's missing sort of that passion part. Okay, how many relationships do you know that are only commitment? That are only based on, well, I promised I would be with you, but I'm not attracted to you, and we don't have anything, we're not intimate, we don't communicate at all, we don't share. I'm only here out of a sense of responsibility. And so I feel like in the book, we saw a lot of this. Maybe it's cultural, maybe it's the time in the lives that we see those characters, but I thought this part got really highlighted. The idea that I need to stay in this relationship because I promised I would. All right, now what happens if we move around the triangle and we have, instead of just one, we bring in two parts of the triangle? So, romantic love, sort of the notion of romantic love when you first fall in love. So it takes it past just passion into intimacy, and so it's the beginning of romantic love. But you haven't committed, you've only been dating for a short amount of time. But you can see you're moving to it, but you're not quite there yet. Okay, how about companionate love? Now, this is a lot of what I see with relationships that my friends that I have, their marriages, I've been married 20 years, and we have kids, and we have jobs, and we're busy, And so we're good friends and we're committed, but boy, we lost that part. And that's something that, look at all the magazines on the shelves. What are we trying to do? We're trying to keep that passion alive. How do you do that? I think that's one of the universal struggles in romantic relationships, is you are committed to each other and you're good friends. So how, after you're at the breakfast table for so many years, do you keep that part alive? And then this one is just an interesting one to kind of throw in. They call it fatuous love. It's the, oh my gosh, let's go to Vegas and let's get married. Right? So it's missing the friendship part. It's taking that passion and saying, I really want this. And so let's go make a commitment off of it. But you realize kind of without the friendship, this part's going to fade a lot. So again, he came up with, this is now a triangle, see my theme? And I tried to map it. Remember, passion was down here for love. So commitment is personal. And you'll see in the next slide, this is the way I explain it. So sometimes when I'm talking to a couple about relationships, I ask them this question: how much of your relationship is what we'd call want to? How much of your relationship, how committed are you to your relationship because you want to be there? Much like passion, the want to part of relationships fades quicker than most. The moral part, now remember we had intimacy up there. The moral part of a commitment has to do with what we call ought to. I ought to stay in this relationship. People are expecting me to. We are married. I ought to stay married. It's that moralistic idea. So want to, ought to, have to. So we can talk about relationships and the characters in the book based on how much do we think they wanted to be together. We ask couples before they get married to not live together for no other reason than you have put have to really high and it's clouding want to. I have to stay with him. My rent, my bills. I have to stay. Your decision to be married should be want to. I want to be with you, not because I have to be, because where else will I go? That's a really crappy way to make a decision about where you want to be, if this is the relationship you want to be. So anytime your structural commitment is overpowering your decision, and you know that, you've been in a relationship with someone and you're thinking, I don't want to, I should stay, because that's the ought to, I should. And you know what, I have to. I at least have to get through this semester. Here's our want to, ought to, have to. If we put it all together, what would be the hallmark of a strong commitment, where you want to, you have to, you ought to? We'll call that consummate love again. So again, we can say the hallmark of a relationship is when you love fully and you're committed fully. Because really, seriously, that want to, if you want to be committed, the rest of the stuff is easy. The should, the ought to, I should, doesn't even matter because I want to. Okay, so romantic love, this is an interesting one. To think that my want to and my ought to, my should might go together. That's a little harder to overlay. Companionate love really fits for me though. And this again, remember, this is where I see a lot of marriages. They're friends. I ought to stay married and I have to stay married, combined together to make companionate love. It's not bad love, right? But it's sort of devoid of the fun, the joy, the passion. And it's not what we should ascribe to. It is what it is. But how can we make it more? We'll talk about that in a little bit. Remember that fatuous love is putting the want to together with the have to. So getting married in Vegas, getting married quick. is that idea. I somehow thought commitment helped me understand. One of the couples Dr. Barbero was talking about that she was drawn to were the Pritchetts. Do you remember that, the married couple where she's leaving him? What is going on? That they have lived so long together, but they didn't share that really big news that I'm getting out of this marriage and drop a bomb. And how many times do we hear that happen? Through our friends or in the news, that all of a sudden somebody comes home and says, I want a divorce. Well, what the heck? What life have you been leading up to that point? What lies have you been telling yourself? Not just me. Forget me. What have you been doing to all of a sudden come to this point and be like, I gotta get out? Because that's not how it happens. We build into love, we build into commitment, but all of a sudden we can just drop a hammer and get out? That seems so unsatisfying when we're the person who is left. Because we can't figure out, this didn't happen overnight. If we built into love and we built into commitment, then you built your way out of here, but I didn't know. And how did I not know? And so that was the question that kept going through my head. These people were dropping a bomb on their partner. What happened before that bomb? What responsibility do we have in relationships to talk about our needs, to talk about how unsatisfied we are, to at least make a go at figuring it out before you drop the bomb? Because the shrapnel that's left after the bomb drops, that's amazing. That's amazingly hard. If you've ever had to comfort a friend after getting, the bomb dropped on them, and they come to you. And so you're trying to put the pieces of your friend back together, and that's super hard. That's almost impossible, because you're both trying to make sense. I don't know, maybe he was doing this, maybe she was doing this, I don't know. What did you think? Did you have any clue? Can you put the puzzle together? So one of the things we know about us as humans is we are sense-making people. We like to put the puzzle pieces so that we can tell a coherent story. And when the bomb gets dropped, our puzzle pieces are all messed up. And we work for years and years to try and put those pieces back. And I feel like only when those pieces come back do you get peace. Once you can make your head understand what happened, do you move on? So one of the things that I struggle with when I work with couples is I have to be careful how I say it, because I'm saying it to you. Hey, you might want to think about. Instead, now I can talk about her, like, darn it, she gave up on her marriage. She gave up on her relationship because she wasn't courageous enough to share her real self. Why did she never go back to baking? Why did she live a life where she did everything for her husband, like getting his favorite, flowers in the garden? She lived an inauthentic life. The second part of connected is compassion. And that's part of, remember in our other triangle, this is the intimacy part of a triangle. I thought that fit well. I think compassion is intimacy. How do we become intimate? It's through sharing yourself, sharing what's really on your heart, sharing your fears. When's the last time you told someone what you were afraid of? Does anyone know what you're afraid of? That person is probably very close to you. And hopefully reciprocity is there. They've shared with you what they're afraid of. That's how we come together, is by being compassionate, sharing. And the last one then builds into connection. So to go back, if we are hardwired for connection, and yet our society lives a disconnected life. So Brene talks about how we are the most in debt, the most addicted, the most medicated, and the most overweight adult cohort that the U.S. has ever seen. She connects all those things, which are numbing. You numb yourself. It's coping, because she says we're disconnected. And the reason we're disconnected is because we don't think we're worthy enough to really live out loud. We think we'll be rejected if we show the world what we really are. And she bases it on shame. And until we really learn to say, I am enough, and it's not something you have to heal from. It is just believing, I am enough right now. I am enough. Love me. This is what I am. Because we fake it and we pretend. Right? And it's funny to talk about this with love, because part of the beginning of love is faking it. Okay, it's been a long time since I was dating, but I tell a story. What I love, the music I love is Barry Manilow. Okay, gross, right? Guess what? If you're dating me, I'm not going to tell you I like Barry Manilow. Guess what I like? I like jazz. I don't like jazz. I don't own one jazz album. I own like 17 Barry Manilow albums. I'm not telling a guy I'm dating, oh yeah, Barry Manilow. No way. So unsexy, very uncool. And so we present. So part of our dating relationship is based on lies. Oh yeah, I'm so cool. Look at this great car I drive. Yeah, I can't afford the payments, but look at how awesome this car is. And gosh knows, we live in that society of, hey, if you just pretend, that's good enough. But if you hook someone on pretend, and it's not lies, it's sort of, just enhancing the truth. We have a lot of ways to rationalize it. But can you see how we get stuck in a relationship that we're not authentic? Because when do you break out the Barry Manilow albums? And what a risk is that, right? Like, how difficult is that to be like, hey, gotta tell you something. This, skeleton back here, you need to know it. And I know I presented myself wrong. We don't do that. We don't ever go back and correct it. We sort of hope over time they'll forgive you for that when they figure it out. And maybe we don't talk about it. But I did have a friend when I was in my dating scene. She bought me like a jazz compilation. She's like, just take this because I don't want you to keep lying. You need a jazz album. If you're going to say you like jazz, here's your jazz album. So now look, so in the world when I was dating, we didn't have online dating. What can you present online about yourself that's so totally inauthentic? Anything. Who's checking it? Who's fact checking? No one. How about the pictures? Pictures aren't even real, right? Like, you can pick a picture. If your friend really says that looks like you, then maybe you can keep it up there. But no. So if our relationships are built on inauthenticity, how do we get back to really trusting to share ourselves? It's scary. I think it's terribly scary. But I like what she says. I like what Brene Brown says about fight it, trust, go and live out loud and love out loud, regardless of what comes back to you. The next part, I thought, is we talk about, so here's compassion, courage, connection. Brene calls that wholehearted living. And you know this adage that in a relationship, the only person you can fix is you, right? If you ever get to that point where you're counting in your relationship, well, I did this, this, and this, and this. Whenever you find yourself counting, and there's a lot of research on this, that we overestimate how much we put in and we underestimate how much they put in. And I promise you, in my marriage, I did that one time. I thought I did all the housework. So I said, hey, I feel overburdened. And I don't see you contributing. And my husband said, okay, let's write that down. And I know not to bet against him, so I don't know why I did this. But I said, okay, let's write it down. And he said, oh, here's the catch, though. Write down how much time it takes you to do all your stuff that you do. So during a day, I make the beds, I feed the pets, I make lunches, I do the dishes, I I do a lot of the household stuff. But when you start to put down what the time frame is on it, right? Like, how long does it take to make your bed? 3 minutes is actually pushing it, right? Because I just throw stuff up. Really, so I do 25 things a day, every day. But all told, they come up to be like an hour and a half a week. I mean, really, it's a lot of activity. So I'm thinking I'm doing a lot. My husband writes down, I cut the grass, 4 hours. I do the finances, 6 hours. I change the oil in the car, 4 hours. And I was so embarrassed about how I didn't even pay attention to the stuff that he does to keep our family running and overemphasized mine. So I know it 100%. When we are counting, we're getting into a bad position. So my advice always to when you find yourself counting, because it happens, right? You get all, I'm doing more than you are. When we get there, do more. I promise you, when you do more, you forget about counting. And so, seriously, that is something I think that helps, because counting doesn't work. It doesn't work in romantic relationships because we're not based on equality. Ugh, what? I want to be with an equal. What I mean is, relationships give and flow. And so sometimes somebody needs more caretaking than the other person. They have a really busy semester, they have a really busy work week, they are tired and stressed all the time. Guess what? Your turn to step it up. Your turn to show compassion and empathy, because the relationship long term is going to flip the other way. And so if you are withholding, if you are counting, if you are, not all in, what's going to happen when the tables turn and you need it? So you don't do it because, I better do it now because when I need it, you better be. That's not it. It's if you're going to live wholeheartedly, you live all in. Give as much as you can. Walk with dignity and respect in your relationship. I'm getting back into motivational speaking. I apologize. I am what we call a smoother. So I really care about you and what you think, and I don't care enough about myself to tell you what I need. This is what I thought Mrs. Pritchard was. Right? She was so concerned about making a nice house and making her husband happy and kind of bringing him the things that he wants, that she totally denied her own self-need. That is a terrible recipe for being in a relationship if we look back to connectedness. Because you're not living out loud. You're not giving your partner a chance to make it better for you, help talk you through it. You are decreasing the intimacy in your relationship when you don't. And I saw her doing that. On the other side, really, the high competitor is very self-interested, only in it for what they can get, and they don't care what you get. So that's I'm just going to tell you what I feel. I don't care if you like it. That's the kind of the opposite way to live. And those people are toxic to live with if they don't practice respect. If they don't talk to you respectfully, they're just going to lay it out there. You didn't do this and I need this. And where is this? That's a hard person to live with. But this one is just as hard. And that's weird, right? This person is caustic, is out there, so we know they're hard to deal with. This person is giving up on their relationship too, because you have no idea they're unhappy. That's where the hammer comes down. So I want us to really think about, when we talk about relationships and sort of conflict, yeah, two of you button heads, I will take that over two smoothers. I'm telling you, working with two conflict avoiders is the hardest relationship to help, because you have to ask people to be brave. You have to ask people to say their needs. They are so used to not saying their needs, they almost don't even know what their needs are. And that's a relationship that just fades away in time, and people become roommates instead of intimately connected. I promise you, I'll take this one, because I know what to deal with them. I can help them. I can help them say it better. I can help them say it so the other person can hear. I can help them problem solve because it's right out there. It's just an interesting way to think about relationships, right? That the quiet, nice, sweet relationship is disintegrating on the inside. And only you've lived, you know where you are on this chart, you know maybe where your partner is on this chart. And how do you come together? How do you speak more of what you need? How do you say it more? How do you say it to each other in a way that can be heard? Okay. I will try not to go too self-helpy here, but I got here by thinking about Mrs. Pritchard again, or Uma's dad. These are both people who dropped the hammer down. Again, being a recovering conflict avoider, being a smoother, it's hard for me to know how to say it. So what happens is, remember, I stuff it down, and then about the 17th conflict that comes up, it all comes out. Well, that's going to be a fight right then, because I'm bringing stuff up from 3 months ago. Again, research tells us, with a healthy communicator, with a partner who communicates well, we can learn to communicate better. We can grow in relationships. We don't have to just come into a relationship as we are and not grow. We can grow inside that relationship. But we got to do things like that and protect ourselves. If you can find a way to talk about irritations in a way that doesn't make your partner defensive, you are solving conflict by problem solving. It doesn't mean it's loving and comfortable, but it means that you're at least making progress toward it not repeating. Because Groundhog Day conflicts, the ones that keep coming up and coming up and coming up, are worth taking the time to really problem solve. Don't fight into that. You have to sit down when you're not in a fight and be like, hey, can we talk about how we do going to parties? Because we seem to not be doing that well. Don't do it at the end of a party. There's so many reasons why that's not going to work. But do it when you're not at a party, and we need to talk about what's our plan going in, because we seem to get in a fight at the end every time. Okay, so it's worth going into it. All right, anything else? Well, thank you. Thanks, you guys, for this opportunity.